Good morning, everybody, and welcome to section 5 of ceramics demos. Today we're going to look at surface techniques numbers 1 and 2, subtracting and adding clay. And so we're going to start with surface technique number 1, which is the subtractive clay technique, and it is just what it sounds like. We are subtracting elements of the clay in order to do different things. And so the first thing we are doing is obviously taking away clay, and some of the tools that we would use for those are the same ones that I was showing you last time, and those are things like the loop tools or the little reductive tools that we have. These are, of course, are in different sizes, and we have other tools that we can use to scoop things out. You can always use your ribs. These are really good for that sort of thing. What we would be doing with the subtractive techniques, and obviously then, as I said, is reducing or taking clay away. And one thing you might want to do with subtractive technique is we would be making our own palettes for glazes. These are palettes where we would put our glazes if we're going to be using glazes in the classroom, and everybody gets their own palette, everybody makes their own. You can make it in any kind of shape or design that you'd like to. And this person decided to make it kind of like a dog's paw, which actually came out really nicely, rather cute. But these are little divots in the palette that were made with something like this. And so you would scoop the clay out of here, get the shapes that you want, and that would be a subtractive method that you could use in order to get the desired effect that you're looking for. Now, another subtractive way of doing things is to create a texture, and a texture would be created possibly by, I don't think you can see this very well, but this one has a real rough texture to it all around these glasses here. The person used some sort of, probably a serrated edge like this, and they just scratched it up to give it a texture like that. But then you can also find a texture, and again, these are kind of hard to see, but the blue in here is textured, and it was done using a mat, which I showed you last time, but this was a different one. It's not the wood-shaped mat that we used on the last demo. But with this one, there's a texture in here that is considered subtractive because you've actually kind of taken some of the clay away. Then we have additive techniques, and additive techniques are just like they sound. We are adding things to the clay. And with this one, we can see that these were added, these glasses were added here. This is actually a good example of both, because I can see the additive elements here, but I can also see the subtractive elements here. They've scooped these little divots out for the dice that this box is holding. I've got additive here. I don't know if this is eggs or eyes, but I have additive elements here, and then I have additive elements on this side as well, if you can see from the sides where they are. This piece has a load of added elements or additive elements. I've got, this looks like some kind of a fish, but there are all these little added pieces here, the added fins, these added coils at the top, these added eyes and mouth. All of that is considered an additive element. And these are done very easily with a lot of different things. But the one thing that you do have to keep in mind anytime you're adding things or sticking things together is the 4 S's of clay attachment. And that's score, slip, stick, and smooth. And by scoring, we've looked at this before, but the only way that you're going to get any of your additive elements to work, or the only way that you're going to get anything to stick together for any lengthy period of time, is to score and slip it. And I will show you how to do that briefly. This is some very plastic clay. I wouldn't normally be doing this with clay that's this plastic. I would normally be doing it when it's a little bit more leather hard or close to that. But I would take my clay, and to score it means that you're basically just making a lot of little notches or marks in it. So I could take something like this, which is the serrated edge rib, and if I were going to stick these together, let's say I want to make a box like this one over here, and I want to stick one slab to another slab to start my box, I would score any areas that are going to be in contact with one another and any areas that I want to have sticking together. And so to score it, I'm simply going to take this serrated edge and make a lot of little marks in it. And what this does is it allows for a much greater area of contact for the things to stick together. So I'm going to do that on this edge, and then I'm also going to do it on this edge where I'm going to be sticking it together to this piece. So I'm going to do the same thing here, and you want to be careful to just do the scoring where the pieces are going to be stuck together so you don't have a lot of extra marks on your piece. So now that I've got that scored here and here, I'm going to stick these two together, but not until I slip them together. And slip, one of us showed you last week. Slip is basically just super wet clay. It's muddy clay. It's clay that we've taken and added water to so that it becomes more of a paste than the plastic clay that we're looking at right here. And if you got a clay kit, you've got one of these, and hopefully you got instructed on how to do the slip. So I would have my slip ready to go, and again, it's just really muddy clay, and I could take a brush and really just brush it right on there. And you don't have to worry about using too much, just put enough on there to cover everything. And the same on this side. And once I've got my pieces scored and slipped on both sides, I'm going to stick them together where I want them. Press them down nice and tight, and the slip should act as kind of a glue. And so you just want to set this here and hold it for a few seconds, just enough to get it to stick. And once it does, we'll let this dry until it's leather hard, and then we can do whatever we need to do with it. If we're going to add things to it, if we're going to subtract things to it, whatever needs to get done with that, we can do that then. All right, so that's your 4 S's: the scoring, the slipping, the sticking, and the smoothing. Smoothing, if you do need to smooth it out, you could use a non-serrated rib and make sure that things are all nice and smooth and even. You can work like that. Sometimes you don't really even need to do that, but if you do, that's a good way to do it. Well, I think the only thing I've left out here at this point is slip should be the consistency of pudding. I called it like mud, but it's basically the same thing. It's still pretty wet and muddy and a little bit thick, kind of like paste or pudding. And then finally, your proper attachment helps to prevent cracking and breaking as the clay dries. So making sure that you get this wet enough and put it together firmly enough that it's going to stay will prevent it from cracking while it's drying. And again, remember not to dry your stuff too fast. When it's finished, put it in a bag, whether it's on another board or whatever, but make sure that it doesn't dry too fast. And I believe that that's all we need to do for today. So that was Surface Techniques 1 and 2, subtracting and adding clay, and that was section 5.